Have you ever asked yourself why some capable leaders end up completely overburdened and too tired? And it's not because they don't care about the organization. In fact, sometimes they care so much that they end up carrying too much. And although they might carry it well, the problem is some of the weight that they are carrying isn't theirs to carry. And what happens is the leader ends up becoming the entire system of the organization they're leading, or even the department. Welcome to Leading Lightly. Our goal is to help leaders reduce the burden they carry through clarity, ownership, and less friction. Today's question is, what is in your leadership backpack? What still belongs to you? What should now be carried by the team, by a process or a system or a tool? So I'm going to give you an analogy that I hope will help you get clarity on the workload that you're carrying each day. So imagine your work is like trying to take someone on a hike. At first, it's just you taking one person. It's one person, one route. You just carry a small backpack, a little bit of water, some basic first aid stuff, and you have a simple plan. But then more and more people want to go on that experience with you. Next thing you know, you have 5 people, 10 people, a large group. And the demand is great. It means your business, whatever you're providing, the product or business is being successful. More and more people want it. But what's happening is there's more and more weight. You have permits, insurance, emergency plans, communication, training, finance, HR. You have all these consistency challenges as you try and bring more and more people on. So you sit there and you think, oh, let's hire somebody to help. And this is where the challenge often starts. Eventually, what happens is you need to hire help to keep doing this work. But the experience can no longer live in your head anymore. So what happens is you need to define what good looks like, what matters most to the organization, what can vary, what cannot vary, what safety means, what success means. Many organizations add people, but do not make the work transferable. So then the leaders keep carrying little bits of invisible parts of the job in their pack. And here's the problem. Leaders often keep those slivers. So a small approval, a little access here and there, one decision, a customer issue, a process that they understand. Each sliver feels small, but together they start getting heavy. Eventually, the organization rides on the leader's back. I first saw this clearly when I was working at a large outdoor center at a university, and it was financially struggling. We had great people. We had a great purpose, but the work, ownership, and financial clarity were not distributed properly. What was interesting about that was in that organization, they did not know that they were going to lose as much money as they did. And my role when I came on was to help sort out what everyone was carrying and redistribute the load. The challenge there was we ended up having to cut a significant amount of our team and redistribute significant amounts of work. We were given 2 years to balance a budget, and we did. Since then, I've had the same pattern over and over again in different organizations. Some organizations want to make these changes. Those are the ones that I need to work with, and some do not want to make the changes to make the operation run smoother. So the first point to consider is, how much do you care and how much are you carrying? The two are very different. But care and carrying are not the same thing at all. You can care deeply without carrying it. If you carry everything, others may never truly own their work. And that's where the problem lies. So you're able to care for the organization, but you can't carry. The next point that I have often seen people struggle with is when you decide that things in your backpack don't belong there anymore and you need to delegate, it is not abandonment. The taking the weight out of your own backpack does not mean throwing it at someone else and walking away. I have seen people try to do that. Usually they end up coming back and gathering the pieces again anyways. So a healthy handoff means they own the work. They know what good looks like from their leader. They know the boundaries that they need to stay within. And they know how, and this is very important, you know how to monitor the work. So there's one thing between just handing it off and walking away. Another thing is to hand it off and monitor it frequently. And for me, whenever I run or work in an organization, if I find struggles monitoring it, that's when I really have to step in. So there is a way to, you end up in a rhythm so you can check progress on projects that you've handed fully over. So you're shifting from carrying to monitoring. Carrying means the work waits for you. You can become the bottleneck. You wake up, you're stressed. You got to check everything to keep everyone going because you're holding little bits of everyone's job. Monitoring means someone else owns it, but you can still see if it is healthy, if it is operating. Carrying makes you the bottleneck. Monitoring lets you lead without becoming the system, without carrying that whole load. The sweet spot that I've found is where ownership still exists with the proper monitoring. People do better when they truly own something. I don't know a single employee I've ever had or someone that I've worked with that doesn't truly want to own something in their work. And the problem is a lot of organizations say, well, you almost own it, but there's these things, there's these rules, there's these pieces in place. Sometimes a lot of processes exist without anyone owning them. No one even investigates why they exist, what's created them. The whole organization is being run by a process that maybe came out of nowhere. So you want to question all of those. You want to be removing them as fast as you're bringing them in. Probably faster, at least at the beginning. Real ownership needs these clarities. What good looks like. Who has the right to make what decision within what boundary? What boundaries is that work going to cross over with other people? I call it lines in the sand. You want to make sure that you're fitting within your area, but you're able to cross over healthily and help other people. What gets reported back to the leader? When you got to step in, when you step out, and when completely to stay back. An important part of leadership that I find a lot of people don't work on is when your team is functioning really well, when they're succeeding quite well, you want to disappear. You want the credit to go to them, the success to go to them. Then they get more and more ownership and they take on more. And then your job shifts from carrying a bunch of it to monitoring how they're carrying it. You can come in and give these coaching sessions, these little quick updates to people and help them get back on track if they need it. But here's the most important part of that. If your backpack is lighter, if you learn to delegate properly and learn to manage all of this properly, what happens is when things get very hard, that's when you as a leader need to be able to step in and perform really well. So while you want your team to carry a lot of the work, you want to be able to carry the hardest stuff because you're the person who can do that and no one else can. You know the organization in more depth. You know all of the processes in much greater detail. And while you want to check in with your team, when the going gets very tough, the leader needs to get going. And I have seen both situations. I've seen situations where the leader disappears when things get hard. That is the biggest trust losing situation I have ever seen, and I've seen it happen multiple times, especially when you have certain staff making calls on decisions and then those decisions don't work and then those staff just disappear into the woodwork. That is devastating to people's leadership and their motivation and their desire to own. Those are the things that you need to consider when you look in your backpack. What you want to do is really visualize your leadership backpack. You can pick whatever color you want it to be, whatever it feels like it should be, because you're the one carrying it. You can describe it better than anybody, but you really want to own that backpack. You want to take it off, put it on the ground, feel the weight of it before you set it down, and then open it up. And then you ask yourself, what am I carrying? And then the heavier question is, what am I carrying because I care? Which is a very important piece to consider when you're thinking about the things you're carrying. Pieces that you're carrying that have a high emotional attachment are going to be the hardest ones to let go. And those are often where you see organizations have the most friction. And the person's letting it go, but they're not fully letting it go because they still own it inside their heart. That's the hardest connection to break. And it's okay, but if you can learn to switch to monitoring it. And what am I carrying because I do not trust the handoff? Why don't you trust the handoff? If you're not trusting the handoff, is it that you hired the wrong person, you trained them wrong, or that it's a you situation? You look through that backpack, I would say list each of those items, and then you ask yourself, what could I shift from carrying to monitoring? And then what is the plan to monitor? Especially the ones that you really care for. If you don't move them over, have a good plan to monitor, you're going to step back in or worry about them all the time. What are the items that you can shift from carrying to monitoring? Who needs real ownership of this situation, that thing that you're carrying? What rhythm would help for you to trust in the handoff? I genuinely believe doing the right thing at the wrong time is still can be very destructive. And I'm not talking about ethical things. I'm just talking about if you know this change needs to happen, but you don't have the right rhythm to do it, it's a dangerous change to make. In closing, if you were tired, it may not mean that you were failing. It may just mean that your backpack's overloaded. The organization's changed, but the weight was never redistributed. Some weight always belongs with the leader, especially the heavy bits. But not every decision, process, problem, and gap should live in your backpack. If this connected, please subscribe or follow along. I'm just getting started on YouTube, but I've been on podcast for quite a while. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment with one thing sitting in your backpack or any questions you might have. I'd love to hear from you. So remember, the goal is not to carry less because the work matters less. It's to carry the right things and build a system strong enough to carry the rest.